Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast, a show where every day we explore how technology is transforming both businesses and lives across the globe. I'm your host, Neil C. Hughes, and I'm excited to have you join us today for what promises to be another thought-provoking conversation, because today I'm excited to bring on a very special guest. Her name is Julie Smith. She's Director of Data and Analytics at a company called Alation. Now, Alation is a global data intelligence company, and Julie is a seasoned veteran in the data industry, but she has witnessed an incredible transformation in this field throughout her career. So, one of the key topics that we'll be delving into is the importance of people-led data transformation. Yes, this is a tech podcast, but I want to learn more about the human element that makes data, makes technology a success. Now, Julie firmly believes that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to bringing people along on a data journey, which is refreshing to hear, and also that a robust data governance framework is essential. But the key lies in understanding and engaging with a diverse range of individuals involved. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also explore Julie's experiences as a woman working in the data and tech industry, shedding light on some of the barriers that she may have experienced, some that may have been removed, and some that still might exist for women striving to excel in this field. But I don't want to reveal any spoilers, so buckle up and hold on tight, because no matter where you're listening in the world, I'm going to be beaming your ears all the way to the UK, where Julie Smith is waiting to join us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Certainly. My name's Julie Smith, and I am Director of Data and Analytics for Alation, who are the well-known data catalogue and data intelligence platform providers. After a career which I saw myself starting off in IT and ended up looking into a BI tool set and going through consultancy in data and otherwise, I found myself at Alation, which is quite an interesting and varied role, since I am now representing the persona of our own customer base within our company. And so I have quite a different view on life to things, and because we're providing a service that I benefit from internally. So we use our own product or eat our own dog food, as they like to say. I prefer to drink my own champagne.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's what we do. We provide those services. So my team looks after the data governance program, data engineering and analytics for Alation.
Fantastic. Well, it's a huge honour to have you on the podcast. You've got a fantastic career in the data industry, and I suspect that you've seen some substantial changes along the way. Things are evolving so quickly at the moment, but I'm curious, if you look back, what are some of the most significant transformations you've observed, and have you seen them impact the way businesses operate today?
Oh gosh, how far back do you want me to go? I mean, yikes. I suppose, from time to time I do ponder the mysteries of life and data and the industry and things like that. And things trigger looking back. I remember, sitting watching my dad use cassettes to install his operating system on his Sharp MZ80B personal computer for his own business that he ran. And then how he got Lotus 123 and installed that pioneering spreadsheet. And that I see that as sort of this sort of little revolution that occurred in smaller industries that suddenly enable people to do all that. And then when I actually sort of grew up, although I think I still probably am growing up, and got into the industry, etc., just seeing how people were using this stuff and how things facilitated people. I started off in a large enterprise that had lots of facilities available to it. So, it had the resources, it had the staffing and everything. But things like, cloud, which is now, providing people the ability to scale up without the need for, data centers and things like that. Having that ability to scale up their and do things they really previously wouldn't have been able to do. And it's sort of emulating what happened with the PC back in my dad's day.
Yeah.
So I think that was amazing. But I think that more related to my role now with data, I think that what's been great to see is how people have recognised and how it's become this discipline in its own right. It's no longer bundled in so strongly with IT as being a technical thing. And it's understood that this is actually something that needs its own, be regarded as its own entity, its own dedicated resources, the own approaches and disciplines around it. The fact that we now have that, as with representation at the C-suite in terms of CDO, CDAOs and similar. And it's blurred those boundaries that existed so strongly early in my career between IT and the business, to really bring that collaboration together and to bring those two parts together and unlock so much, capability for business.
Yeah, I was getting flashbacks there listening to you, and I too remember those days of cassettes and a pile of floppy disks to where we are now with artificial intelligence and machine learning, etc. It's just a phenomenal journey. I love the fact that we've been there throughout that entire journey. But before we get too carried away with the tech side of things, one of the things I always say on this podcast is technology works best when it brings people together. And one of the things that set off my tech spidey senses, and one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today, is you've always stressed the importance of a people-led data transformation. So can you elaborate on that and why this approach is possibly even more crucial now, and how it differs from some of the other strategies out there?
I do. You're right. I do feel very strongly about people and their involvement. And as you say, at the moment, with AI being so stronger a theme in everything, that we re-emphasize, we double back on this need not to forget the people. Over the years, I've seen projects where it's been so focused on the technology and the actual solution that's being implemented, they've almost been blind to what the success of a project actually should involve. When a project gets implemented, people talk about, was it on time? Was it in budget? And it's like, yeah, but was it used? I've seen, in times gone by, people look at project plans and think, we need to cut things on here. What will we get rid of? I don't know. What can we get rid of? Let's get rid of the training. Okay, great. So we're going to spend how much on this system, but we're not going to tell anybody how to use it. And it's patterns like that I've seen over my career that sadden me, that people forget the need to have people involved. The more you want to get from data, the more input is required from the right people for that. I mean, we think about the classic pyramid of data becoming information, becoming knowledge, becoming wisdom. The higher up that you get, the more input you need from people to give that context to the data, to give that, the actions that need to be taken from it. AI models are only as good as the information they're given. And we still need to gather that information and contextualize it and otherwise. And so, the more we want to get out from data, the more we need to get that tribal knowledge in, get that information in there. And there are people in our businesses that, the covert data heroes that are out there, and it's about finding them and helping bring them into a coordinated fashion where we can bring that data together, make it work for everybody. And also, I think with data, people have alternatives.
Yes.
They go to. With systems, when you're implementing systems, it's like, well, you have to use that system. They still have that fallback of the spreadsheet, which are amazing. It transformed life for my dad in his self-employed status, but they're also the bane of my life as a data person, and from a governance perspective and similar. Well, people have got that alternative that they will go back to, and we need to make people aware and engage them in what we want to do with this data and what benefits they will get from it. We face the similar challenges that you face on all things about change management, and taking people on that journey that resist change. I remember once trying to persuade somebody to migrate from Microsoft Access to a better database for their analytic needs, and they were absolutely convinced that nothing could live up to Microsoft Access. And it was fear. It was fear about change, and people won't get engaged, won't get to adoption of systems. We won't get people using that system, which is true measure of a success of something, not just was it on time and is it in place, is it being used? That's about bringing people on the way, make them feel ownership, remove the fear they have in it, make them feel part of it. There's a lot of talk about data culture. And we ourselves, we advocate data culture completely. It's something we think, our product very much, embraces and helps people with. But when you look online, if you look at, what's the definition of a data culture, you'll see in there a lot of definitions that are purely around, being data driven. So, and just being data driven means like we're simply going to be making decisions based upon data. It's so much more than that. Your data culture has got so many touch points in the journey that data has before it gets to, all that sexy stuff. With the decision, the wonderful dashboards and AI happening at the end, from system design, from application implementation, the people entering the data in the first place, how the data is perceived and understood, the trust in that data, the responsible democratization of that data, to actually providing them access to it. That's all people driven. It really is. And, we need to get people involved. We need to take them on that journey. And I don't know if it's coming across. I feel quite strongly about this. But I do. I think it's so important that we don't forget the people and get just so taken along on the beautiful hype cycle with things that look amazing. But, how do they get the information to drive them? How do they get the information to feed them? It's people. It comes back to that.
Yeah, your passion for this really comes across, and it's so refreshing to hear. And so many great points in that, because data governance frameworks are indeed essential. But as you said, it's important to consider the different people that you're engaging with every step of the way. So for business leaders listening, I guess the big question is, and it is a tricky one, how do you balance that technical and human element in data governance? Because it's quite a fine balancing act, isn't it?
It can be. I mean, data governance. Yeah, you've hit upon a really prime area for data there, which is, I think, we're now in an age where people are really starting to understand what it's about, and what it can achieve. I've done a talk recently where I open up to people, because I sometimes get involved in talks on behalf of Alation to talk about my own experiences on things. And I open up the talk by asking the question about, an open question that we collect and display on screen to say, in one word, what's the main blocker that you have to implementing data governance? And we'll get various, questions, but what the vast majority translate into is one word, which is people.
Yeah. And
I think that the thing to remember with it is that technology is a facilitator. The people are what drives it. And it's keeping that balance around those. So, the technical parts, relatively speaking, are easy, especially now where we've got, data discovery through data catalogs, impact analysis through lineage, data trust through data quality tests. But, providing that understanding of that data, providing that understanding of the lineage, providing that what should we be testing this data for? What does good look like for our data trust? It all comes from the people, and it's about getting that change management in there, getting that understanding with the people of why this is important. And, you encounter all shapes of different people in that journey with data governance, and get them involved, get them, the technology, I think, is one that it's a facilitator. Choose one that's, there's a huge wealth of different technologies out there for all forms of things, but you need one that can be embraced by all levels of people in an organization. If we really want to be transformed into being data driven and having data governance become the muscle memory that I would love to see it become with people, we need all levels in the organization to be able to use the technology to be able to use the data catalog, to be able to understand what's in there. And so making people aware of it and not, keeping it to yourself or only the tech teams or the data teams and everything, really giving people that visibility of it and what it can unlock for them. I think that's really key. We shouldn't be portraying this stuff. And sometimes I think I've seen this happen in organizations when I was a consultant. I saw many different organizations where, it's like this dark art that, we don't want to tell you what's inside here, that it might scare you. And let's trust people a little bit to understand this stuff. And we will have to address the different levels of people that are there and what they can understand. But, give them the chance. Give them the chance to be involved on it. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit there. But...
No, not at all. Again, looking back at your career as a woman in a traditionally male-dominated field, I'm curious, have you encountered any barriers throughout your career in tech? Have attitudes in the industry evolved over the years? Is it getting better? Is there still a lot of work that needs to be done? What has been your experiences here?
Oh, gosh. I think it's a funny one, this, because not to play light of it, because I know it can be quite serious for some people, but I think looking back, there's not been many situations where at the time I have thought, well, this is just because I'm a woman, or anything like that. I've had, direct experience of the old chestnuts of sitting in a meeting and making what I felt was a very valid contribution and not having anybody acknowledge it. And then literally 10 seconds later, someone repeating exactly what I said and everybody go, well, yes, absolutely. and that person happened to be a male. There's things like that happen, and being interrupted out of hand and other things like that. More significant items, I think, are only ones that perhaps, in retrospect, I've looked back and gone and wondered about it. If there was some unconscious bias at play or otherwise. I think that things have changed a lot. I think what's important is that it's more recognised now, at least. People do actually see it. And, men as well as women are seeing it and calling it out a little bit more for people. I'm fortunate in my own experience, I think, and who I've worked with, that I haven't come across too many barriers on that. I think part of that might be, I'm as I say, I'm not someone who, goes to that explanation. And so perhaps I ignore it and just carry on regardless. Yeah. and be resilient to it. But that's not to say everybody can do that. And I think that to a certain extent, I mean, with data, we had a discussion panel for the Women in Data organisation, our user conference recently. And the statistics about, women working in data are just as poor as they are in any other tech area. And I think things will, improve a lot if we can encourage more women to participate in data as a career. And I think we bring an awful lot to the table. So, I think that thinking about, well, what is preventing people coming into the area? What is it, is it, because I think it is such a technical discipline, and showing to people you don't have to be technical to do this. We actually want people who are people, because as we're discussing, this is a really important part of what the equation is. And then I think, that will help things, getting that encouragement across and supporting them to go through there. I really look forward to the time when, this type of discussion isn't a question anymore, because, I still think there's a long way to go with it, but, I think things have changed and for the better, but I don't think we're there yet. There's still a bit more understanding to be had and encouragement to get people into data who are women and can bring everything they can bring to it.
And of course, you've held various roles throughout the data industry. So for any younger listeners or people just wanting to explore maybe a career change and enter the industry, what would you say are the specific skills and traits that you've found to be invaluable for success in data-driven roles? Because I think very often people can think, it's only for technical people, but there are so many transferable skills, isn't there, that people can bring into these roles?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'd say younger listeners, I was like, yes, my 3 daughters, so we were very excited when one was going to appear on a podcast. So immediately found it and are going to be listening into this. So for their benefit as well as everybody else. I think what appeals to me about working in data is how it's such a great combination of skills that you can have to work here. And you know, there's lots of different roles. There's a whole wide range of different roles you can have, which, you know, to different degrees will, you know, some will favour more technical, some will favour more people skills. But overall, I think there's some cool ones that will help you on all levels. You know, one of which I think is, you know, it's been an underrated skill. And I think part of that is to do with how people perceive it, is empathy. I think that when people think of empathy, they just think of, you know, oh, nicey, you know, being all soft and cuddly and things like that. But the way I see empathy is it's understanding the business areas you interact with. It's understanding what are their aims, what are they trying to achieve, what are their challenges and frustrations they have. Thinking in their, trying to put yourself in their shoes and thinking, you know, if I was them, how would this data help me? And that can help them, because if you can start putting yourself in their shoes, because they're not necessarily that experienced with data, you can help give them the thoughts around the art of the possible, you know? I've always loved the look on a person's face in the business when you've sort of sat there and gone, oh, so if you want that question, what about, you know, you want to ask ABC, what about XYZ? And they're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, you know, and they can see that you're latching on to what their needs are, you're trying to understand them, and you're engaging them more with the process as well in doing that. So it's not just that understanding, it helps the engagement too. It does help to have what I call a data brain. You know, it's not just simply being technical. There are some people who I've experienced in my career who have been incredibly technical, but they don't get data for some reason. And so understanding how data works, how it interacts, etc., that is obviously key. But if you can combine that with that appreciation of the business, I think that is you know, the secret sauce, really. And lastly, I think the other really key one to pull out is communicating, how you communicate. And this, again, depending on your role with data, can come in so many different formats. You know, in my own role and similar, it's trying to communicate to, you know, get the budget, get the approval to be able to get people to invest in data. Why is it important? What is the story behind the need for data management and data governance, etc.? But also communicating what the data is telling us. You know, I quite often have, you know, students ask me for advice who are studying data science, for example, at university, and they'll say, you know, what advice have you got? And I usually give two pieces of advice. One is, you know, those data sets you've been working with, they're all perfect and you know exactly what they are. Nothing like the real world. You're not going to know what they are. You're not going to know where they came from. So just to get you potential reality there for you. But the other thing I say to them is, you will come up with some of the most amazing, you know, data science models, you know, algorithms, all sorts of things. If you can't explain what they've done, what the results mean, and communicate that to people who aren't data people, who know their business inside out, but just aren't data people in a way, if you can't do that conversion, if you can't translate that into their language, you could have the most amazing, you know, exploration of data in the world. Without that communication, without that translation, it could be all for nothing. And so, you know, really do try and focus on understanding how to do that. It's quite hard sometimes. I think people, again, it comes back to empathy, is that people can tend to think everybody thinks like them. And so being able to think, well, no, if I was them, how would I need to understand this? How would I need that communicated? And I think that's pretty crucial.
Yeah, an incredibly important point to raise. And back to Alation for a moment. I mean, you guys work with some of Europe's biggest brands, from Sainsbury's, Vattenfall, and the Very Group, to name but a few. And I appreciate you probably can't share too much, so I'm not asking you to name any names here, but are there any insights into how data intelligence is transforming some of these industries that you're able to share, just to bring to life what we're talking about here?
you've named some obviously big names there amongst the portfolio of customers that we've got, particularly in Europe now. And, I mean, without naming names, but I know that, Vattenfall is a good example. They're one of their aims is fossil-free living, which I think everybody can resonate with now.
Yeah.
And, a number of the aims they have are very similar to other customers we work with. I think any of our customers, any industry, any area, they ride what a colleague of mine describes as the three-way seesaw. They want to increase profit, they want to decrease spend, they want to decrease risk. And I think what's interesting at the moment is with this change in general is that previously things like data governance and the need for data catalogs and things, the focus was on the decreased risk, compliance, data regulations, and how that all needs to happen. What we're seeing more now is that people realizing, do you know what? This data governance malarkey actually unlocks a whole raft of possibilities in using this data more effectively now. We can exploit this data much more. We can do things like, monitor trends to look at maintenance of assets, to be able to decrease spend, to be able to increase our profit, etc. And so it's showing those much bigger benefits wider to them. I think also that what they're seeing is the need, which again, it comes down to the people aspect, is that collaboration aspect. Bringing together the hive minds that these industries have within each of their organizations there to contribute to the whole. And I particularly do like, Vattenfall, lucky to have them at our user conference recently talking around things. And, what data governance is no longer, again, as I mentioned before, it's a bit like what I said about, it becoming muscle memory. It's not a thing with them. It's just how they do their business. It's what they do. And that's great. And if we can, if it'd be great to think that, in some small way, Alation is, helping them to meet their aim of fossil-free living through the efforts that they're making through their, extensive use of data to do that, then, I'm a happy person.
Love it. Of course, there's also often a perception or misconception maybe that there's a one-size-fits-all approach to data transformation. So we won't go there. There's a whole topic for an entire podcast episode on its own. But is there an example or case study that you could share where a more nuanced approach was needed and how you were able to navigate around it? Again, just to bring to life everything we're talking about here.
Oh gosh, naming names around stuff, but I think that one size fits all. Oh gosh, yeah, I wish. And that's the thing. I think that's one of the situations where, I actually originated as an Alation customer.
Yeah.
I liked it so much I joined the company. So thinking back to, my own experience with it, I think that what's important is having a flexibility of the way you can apply methods, etc. So, what it usually comes down, people, one size fits all, large versus small enterprises, startups, scales up, what industry people are in, what geography they're in. I think the two main factors are what culture people have and their scale. The end goals are usually the same. The foundations they need to build are the same, but the resources they have and the attitude to things, as I say, the culture and scale are the two things that sort of have to be navigated. And that's where having, the flexibility of approach. So you have, develop frameworks that can be adjusted. You need to recognize that not everybody has got the resources at their disposal to, have dedicated analytics teams in every department. Not everybody has the ability to have dedicated people becoming data stewards and evolving a whole new infrastructure around that. So providing options, providing those different levels of approach based upon those two factors and who you're going to involve, that's what's needed. And we could go on for quite some time.
Yes.
and then all the different approaches on this. But yeah, I think there's a whole host of different things, but I think flexibility is key. I think people hope that data governance is another prime example here, that, here's the rules of how to do it. You can't follow that in every organization. You've really got to, and I've said this since I started in IT, in data and otherwise, is, there's all these structured methodologies. Look at what works for you. Look at what fits with your culture and scale. Take those elements and build from there. And yeah, don't think that you have to do it the way everybody else is doing it.
And a few moments ago, we were talking about how, as a woman in a traditionally male-dominated field, you have seen improvements, but there is so much more work that needs to be done. So for any aspiring woman looking to succeed in tech and data fields, is there any advice that you would offer based on your own experience? Yeah,
I think if I look back and think about my own sort of journey, as it were, I think that I'd say it can be building your own confidence and having that faith that you know what you're doing and how things work is important. I think that's something that you obviously you develop as you get older and you work more. I remember once being in awe. A consultant comes in very early in my career. Consultant came in and wow, consultants, they're on another level. And then you sort of sit there and you realize I actually know more about the system than you do.
Yeah.
And you build that confidence around that. But I think you can help gain that confidence by networking a lot. Yeah. And that's kind of be a bit hard, because in order to network, you need to have the confidence to go and do that. But when you do network and you do talk to more people, you'll find, that things that you're thinking, other people will be thinking, that you'll get that fed back to you, and it will help, reaffirm what you're seeing and approaches you're wanting to take. I'd say, if you develop a trusted circle of people that you can go to talk through things. You might have a mentor, you might have some people you just go to who know you, and use them as people to give you that confidence, but also to ground you as well. Because there will be times when, maybe you're not right. Maybe you need to see someone else's perspective. So it's good to have someone to go to and be able to do that. But I think lastly as well, be yourself. Don't try and be what you think other people want you to be. Be yourself. There's a lot of energy you can expend trying to be something you're not. And so having the faith in yourself and who you are and doing what you think's right is much easier and much more straightforward and so much more relaxing and enjoyable than trying to be, some persona that you believe is the appropriate role to play in your organisation and industry and field.
Fantastic advice. Now, I also suspect that during your tech career and the data industry, you've maybe a collection of war stories and amusing tales from your time in the field. So I've got to ask, can you share the funniest or most interesting story that's happened in your career to finish our conversation today?
Well, obviously, I have worked as a consultant and I have worked in other things, and so I've had many sort of interesting things have happened working with those different companies and things, and obviously I need to protect the innocent. So I'm going to go a little bit off-piste on this one, but bear with me, because I think this will hopefully provide a bit of a moral of the story at the end there. So a number of years ago, when I was working for a consultancy, I was heavily pregnant with my third daughter.
Yeah.
I was literally about 8 months pregnant at the time. I think it was around February. I was pretty relaxed because my previous two daughters had both been overdue, so I wasn't expecting anything happening anytime soon. And I was asked if I'd travel up to Scotland, to Edinburgh, to talk to some customers. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't mind doing that, but I knew some other people were going. I said, do you mind someone else driving? Because being as heavily pregnant as I was, it could be a bit tiring. Yeah, absolutely fine. So my hero, who had a great relationship there, is one of our salespeople who was responsible for the customer I was going to go and see. He was like, "Yeah, I'll take you up there." So he took me in his Audi TT, which was interesting getting in and out of at 8 months pregnant. So, up to Edinburgh, and we stayed overnight. We visited the customers, and then at the end of the day, it was like, right, we've got to get home. And I'm like, great. And then only the M74 was blocked completely. You know, the main route you would take south was there was a crash or accident or something, and so we had to think of something else. And my colleague, bless him, was like, "It's all right, we're going to get you home, and I'll just pop it in the sat nav." Pops in the sat nav, and I'm like, "Well, actually," I said, "I know there's a decent A road. I've used it before. I think it was. I can't remember if it's the A. I can't remember what it is now, but there's this A road it goes through the borders. You know, let's just go on that." It's fine. I'll pop it in the sat nav. It'll be great. It'll be fine. So we set off with the sat nav, and alarm bells started to ring when he took the first turning off the main road, and there's snow on the ground, and we started ascending a hillside somewhere. It was quite dark as well at night. We were coming back, and we're going over cattle grids, and we're going down very narrow lanes. And I'm like, "Are you sure this is the best route?" I said, "I'm sure we just stick on the A road. We'll be fine." No. The sat nav says go this way. We should go this way. Okay, listen, we come back, we get back onto a main road again, fine. And then we're off on another detour, we're off on here, we're going over the back of the beyond, we're seeing, you know, waiting for cows to clear the road. And then I'm like, "Look, I'm not being funny." We get to a point, I'm not being funny, but can we just stay on the main road when we get there? I'd be really good. Oh, okay, all right. Anyway, we're going down this other side road again, and suddenly he's like, "Oh, I've missed the turning." So you can sat nav saying, "Oh, you missed the turning." I'm thinking, "Oh, I didn't see anything." So he reverses back up the road, and sure enough, there is a turning, quite a narrow turning. He's like, "I'll go down here." We go down there, and it's like more of a track. And bear in mind, it's pitch black. His lights are illuminating whatever we're seeing. And suddenly he slams the brakes on, as what can only be described as a raging torrent is before us, because the sat nav had taken us to go via a ford. In an Audi TT, and we just sat there and laughed, and I was like, "Look, please, can we get back on the route? We're not going to get through that." And my colleague, he did actually, when he left the company, he cited this as his most memorable event during his tenure. And one of the reason I talk about this is that, you know, again, coming back to my theme, you know, as great as our technology is, as great as our systems are, having context, having people input, questioning what it's telling you is still important, because you don't want to end up with a 8-month pregnant person trying to wade out of a Ford. To say that I did get home safely, he did steer me home safely, and again, a good few weeks later, because all of my children decided to be late, I had a healthy baby girl, but yeah, that did stick in my mind, and it might not be particularly directly data project related, but it was certainly sticks in my mind as something where, you know, sometimes you need people to give you context around stuff.
Oh, absolutely love that. What a cracking story. And fast forward to present day, you're now being beamed into the ears of thousands of people in 165 countries via Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So that should earn you some pretty cool mum points from your 3 daughters. Can we give them a shout out there to your 3 daughters? Make them cringe a little? Is there anything you want to say?
I could probably do Amy, Emma, and Isabel. And I probably need to also mention Lottie, my granddaughter. So, but she's too young to really appreciate this. Maybe in years to come. So, yeah, thank you.
Lovely. And for anybody listening wanting to find out more information about Alation, some of the work that you're doing, ask questions to your team or connect with you, where would you like to point everyone listening?
So, alation.com is our website where you will find, you know, various white papers, custom case studies. There's the odd blog from me on there. It's in terms of connecting with myself, I'm on LinkedIn. You should find me if you look for Julie Smith and Alation as my place of employ. I'm more than happy to link to people and to interact with you on there. So yeah, they're the main ports of call I'd advise.
Fantastic. Well, I love chatting with you today about the importance of a people-led data transformation. So important when we're talking about technology, and also the fact, of course, that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to bringing people along with you on that data journey. And a strong data governance framework is essential. Of course it is, but the key is considering different people that you're engaging with. And also learning more about your insights from all your different roles in the data industry and the specific skills and traits that make people successful in their data-driven roles. I do urge anyone listening to reach out to you if they want to find out more. But more than anything, just thank you for sharing your story today.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, Neil. Much appreciated.
So a huge thank you to Julie Smith, Director of Data and Analytics at Alation. I'm sure you'll agree, not only did she share her invaluable insights into the world of data transformation, diversity in tech, and the evolving landscape of the data industry, but she also just rocked today's episode. So if her daughters are listening, I hope you're incredibly proud. You should be. And for everybody listening, I hope you found this episode as enlightening and thought-provoking as I did. And if you'd like to connect with Julie or learn more about Alation, please check out the links on the show notes that you'll find over on my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. Head to podcasts and you should see everything that you need and much more. And we've got over 2,500 interviews lined up there, so let me know what you think of anything that you find there. And please remember, if you like what you heard, subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and review. They are like gold to podcasters, because the more ratings and reviews, the more the algorithm might smile favourably our way. But that's it for today. So a big thank you to each and every one of you for joining me today. Hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow. We've got another guest lined up. But more than anything, thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.